special tribute to the late five-time world champion, Mr. Steve Shepherd, who we lost the other day. We have a great friend of his who's going to be coming on and chatting with us a little bit, Mr. Sean Kelly, who knows a lot about him and has had dealings with him for many, many years. So I'm very fortunate to have him come on and chat with us just a little bit. Before we go there, I always want to thank our sponsors, Eastern Offset Printing, for what they do for us. I just want to quickly say about um, Steve and what I remember about him, the times that I've met him. Early on, I just read about him, like in Black Belt magazine and things like that. And he was, just some like a myth, legend, out there, fighting. And then years later, I would actually meet him. I think it was actually in Florida somewhere at the World Classic. I thought he was just a nice guy, very intelligent, very smart, and very knowledgeable about the sport of kickboxing. And later I started studying more. Man, this guy had some hands, right? He could really, really, fight and beat some of the people. I was very, very surprised about all the people that he'd won over, and I thought it was just pretty remarkable. So he and I got to know each other a little bit better and all. And we've talked many times over the years, since that time. And he's just, in my opinion, an honorable guy, nice guy, smart, and very passionate about the sport. And it is certainly a loss to the kickboxing and fight community and all. And I know a lot of you youngsters out there in this new world of fighting today, you might not know who Steve Shepherd is or was in this case. But it's someone that you should look up and get to know. And we're going to get to know a little bit more about him today. You can also see a lot of this information on Wikipedia. But I think that he was certainly a pioneer, right, in helping people like me do what I do today as a former two-time world champion, later on as a promoter, just like he was. I certainly ride on his back, if you will, in the sense of all the things that he did long before me. And now that I'm able to do what I do with some level of success and be able to make a living at it, I am so, so grateful for the contributions that he made to the sport. So my sincere condolences to his family and all of his friends. I just wanted to go ahead and get that out. But without any further ado, I'm going to bring up someone who really knew him a lot better than I did. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Sean Kelly. How you doing, Sean?
I'm good. Thank you for the invitation under such circumstances.
Yes, Sean, no doubt about it. I was kind of blown away when I did not know some of the things that, Mr. Shepherd had gone through here recently, only about, the mugger, the attacker, we heard about things like that. But before we go there, tell us a little bit more about you and your background in martial arts.
Well, my background, I studied 4 different systems, but I started off with a gentleman on the East Coast. His name was Francisco Condi, and he was best known on the East Coast around the Baltimore, Pennsylvania area in the 1960s. It was through him is how I met in 1978 Senior Grandmaster Ed Parker, who was best well known in the American Kempo system. So primarily my art of choice was the Kempo system, and still to this day, I'm now, like you probably, we started off as a hobby of interest as a kid, and eventually it then became more of a passion. I had my own school for 29 years here in Palm Beach County, and then became an international instructor, traveling the world doing what I do best, and that is to teach and share what I've obtained. And from the kickboxing to the point karate world, I've trained and worked with people such as Joe Lewis, and I obtained a 5th degree under his system. And very dear, close friend of mine, Bill Superfoot Wallace, and I'm a part of his member and group, the Superfoot Systems, and support not only him as one of my mentors, and trained in other systems. I got into the security industry for about 15 years, and so I'm a licensed also security officer, did some bodyguard work. I currently work for the John Maxwell team, which is just a unique business as well as atmosphere.
Right.
For anybody who knows John Maxwell and his success leadership role, and he's a well-known author. As far as my relationship with Steve Shepard, ironically, I first met Steve in the early 80s when the Guardian Angels came to Palm Beach County.
Wow.
Uh, there was a situation where a little girl was murdered, and not only did myself, but Steve and a few other local martial artists came together and wanted to be a part of something that was for the good, and that
Right.
is to give back to the community. I think a lot of people don't know that side of Steve and how he's very much involved with community service. He was definitely a gentleman and always in service. You said upon introduction how he was a very smart man and very creative. You know, he invented those shoes that came out.
Right.
He was a promoter, well-known promoter, and not only a fighter, promoter, and teacher. He used to do a lot of seminars for me, and I was very surprised at how articulate he was in
Mm,
his teaching skills. And come to learn, he also trained in the famous Miami boxing gym, which was part of the Angelo Dundee
mm,
group of people. And he was a humble man. And as one of those people, I mean, he came to me one time and said, Sean, he goes, I really like how your system is so well organized. He'd ask questions. He loved to share notes. He loved to express growth on his own. He was always learning. And if
right.
he could add value to his students, that's the kind of person he was. One of his greatest fighters, who still has probably the biggest gym in Palm Beach County, is Lou Martinez, Palm Beach Boxing and MMA. But one of the things that struck me as his humility was one day, and this is
Mm,
recent, during a conversation, I did talk to him before this accident, and he was excited to tell me that there was a project, and I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but I'll share
yeah.
that there was a movie in the making about his life, about all about Steve Shepard, the man, the myth, the
Wow.
fighter, the father,
Wow.
that kind of thing. And believe it or not, he was telling me, Sean, I want to fight again. And because
I do believe that. I do believe that.
he was a tiger. I mean, he had the eye of the tiger, and he does have a gift. But back to what I was going to say, he told me, he said, "What?" And I asked him. I said, "Steve, whatever got you into kickboxing?" He said it was Bill Wallace. He said,
Mm,
when I saw Bill Superfoot Wallace do what he did, he said, not only was it amazing to watch what he did, he said, but I think I could do what he's doing. Not kick like he's well known to kick.
right. Right.
He said, but Bill was the one that gave him the drive to become a kickboxer. And
Wow.
I just thought that was just one of the greatest compliments a known champion of 5 different weight categories could tell just innocent me in conversation.
Well,
And then,
Deshaun, as you might know or may not know, that Bill Wallace also inspired me quite a bit. That was my nickname, Superfoot, as well. Uh, but behind Bill Wallace, after Bill Wallace. So he inspired a lot of people, as you were,
and,
sir.
and you know something in the relationship, how I heard of your name over the years was through one of my great friends and early sparring partners was Matt Barrow, and a Kempo brother of mine is Terry Rich.
Yes.
So there's certain names that, like yours and a few others, who will always, I think, be the pioneers on every level. And Steve was one of the. This is going to leave some a scar in the community because of what he's done. He was always thinking, always thriving. I'll I will say this though, uh, he was a disciplinary man, and what he meant by that is one of the reason he told me that he wanted to stop promoting the kickboxing was because of the new generation and that they
Mm,
didn't have the discipline like they did years ago.
right.
And he thought safety was always a top priority.
Mm,
And one of the things he wasn't going to waver on was pulling away from what was to make a champion. I don't care if it's an amateur champion or a
mm,
professional champion.
mm,
He had his recipe, and it worked because he is well known for his champions. People like Troy Higbee is another standout uh, uh, fighter. I can go on and on with names that come to mind that we all knew
right.
each other in the circle of the fighting arena. Plus, he was a tournament guy. He promoted locally and supported the local promoters and point tournament. So
Well,
it's amazing to me that this situation is where it's at.
Did you ever witness him fighting? Did you ever see some of his fights?
Oh my gosh. I watched him when he fought at the auditorium. This is my first fight watching him. And he was fighting one of the Japanese opponents from Japan.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you what, that's back, the WKA. Remember, they allowed the kicks.
Yes.
Those are like hitting with sledgehammers.
Yes.
Steve, if you looked at the way he was built, he's kind of built like Jean-Yves Theriault, where they have
Yes.
that swimmer's body.
Yes.
So until you understand what's at the end of those fists or those legs and feet,
Exactly.
wow, power. This man
Yeah.
has some serious power.
Well, let me ask you a question. He has boxing hands. Where did he get
Oh,
those boxing hands from? He has some of the better boxing hands, and that's not even exaggeration that I've seen in the sport.
I have to tell you, that's probably what made Steve Shepard was in the class of his own. Maybe the homework of working with the Dundee group and team, because you could put him in a corner, and boy, oh boy, that was not the place you wanted to put Steve Shepard.
Right.
And we all know about the bladder punch. He had certain punches that
Yeah.
they were trademarked, and he never missed his targets.
Yes.
And
Right.
wow, he was phenomenal.
Yes, he had a level of ring intelligence, I think, that was very unique. And when you watch him fight and all, and he beat a lot of great champions, those who would maybe go on to be champions, like Bob Thurman,
Like Bob
who
Thurman.
somebody who was on my radar for many, many years that I wanted
I
to fight.
first met Bob Thurman in the 80s when
Yes.
they were doing an auditorium fight, and
Hmm.
JT Will and Don Willis, all those, Joe Corley were there.
Right, right.
And I had the opportunity, and I was maybe 25, 26 at the time, but Bob Thurman
Hmm.
really influenced me.
Mm.
Just ironically, he told me, he said that he always wanted to kickbox, but even on his traditional background, he was told that he wasn't allowed to kickbox until he achieved his black belt from the school that he was part of.
Mm.
But there's another warrior. Bob Thurman to me was one of my heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, people like Bob Thurman or of course Joe Louis and Bill Wallace are a class of their own, but there's a whole host of a lot of champions who went from the point arena to the full contact ring,
Exactly.
like yourself and many, many others. But to be in the same room with these individuals and to just watch their tenacious ways and methods and how they train,
Right.
you never went away without a lesson or two. That's for sure. And they stay with you for the lifetime.
Right, right. And I did see some comments. I saw that Bob Thurman, someone who I would like to have on the show eventually, just to let him know how badly I wanted to fight him. That's the thing about fight sports. And again, we don't want to make this too sad of occasion, because I really think that a person's life should be remembered in a way that has changed and inspired and motivated people to be their very best. And I think Steve Shepard's life, for the most part, has certainly done that, for people like me and thousands of other people, if not more, around the world.
And Steve was one of the first people, since him and I were actually, we were the longest two martial arts schools in Palm Beach County. We were running close to each other. I became the manager of Richard Fromm's school. At that time, it was called National Academy of Self-Defense. He offered
Hmm.
me to take on the task of running and managing his school, which was
Hmm.
kickboxing and also a full-time studio. And that's where I kind of learned from Mr. Fromm all kinds of things about not only the business side of things, but who the local uh, school owners were. And we used to visit each other and do a lot of things together and support each other. But I mean, even in the picture you have here with Steve, if you even watched his postures, everything he did was with detail and articulation. He had a special eye and gift.
Right.
And when he taught with precision. He was the first, I believe, to teach in Palm Beach County what he called the Gentleman's Boxing Fitness program,
Mm-mm.
because he was adamant. Richard Fromm was one too, that also these guys, a lot of us, later on turned our times of competition and just said, all right, I may not be competing anymore, but I can sure use it now as helping our health and wellness. Sugar Ray Leonard's known for that as well, and many other
Right.
boxers.
Right. Right.
But Steve was the local boy. He was our hero.
Right, right. Well, I certainly. So when and some of the fights, do you remember when he had that fight with Demetrius Oaktree Edwards?
I wasn't there, but I sure know about it. I mean, you're talking about Davy and Goliath.
Yeah,
And
I'm trying to figure out. He weighed 159 pounds, and Demetrius was like a couple of 100 pounds and a beast, right? He just really big punches and everything like that. What do you think gives a person that kind of confidence to jump in a scenario like that and win?
I think one of the things that Steve had the empowerment is to allow him to get so psyched up that he went on a mission. And when he went on his mission, he would block out the things he knew that the average person would take as precautionary moments of pause.
Mm,
As a fighter, one thing you don't ever want to find yourself in is that as in a neutrality of mindset.
right.
He had the machine gun mentality, which meant forward. He had a mission. One of the things people don't realize that he was a heavy conditioner. He did a lot of road work. He did a lot of ring work was a specialty of his. And if he knew he was going to be fighting in a particular class, his sparring partners were hired to come in and he would deal with the weight of those individuals.
Ah,
So he had his blueprint. And if it was speed, he'd work on speed. If it was power, he'd work on power. If he was dealing with an orthodox or an unorthodox fighter, he'd break it down even to that level. But
right.
one of the things about Steve is he set his sights, and a lot of people that were friends of Steve's were pro fighters. Bill Clark, we could go into that arena. We could go into some of the people he kept with Don, the Dragon Wilson. These are all people that he would communicate with. He'd contact and have relationships with let it be people like Bill Wallace or some of the local boxing people that were just good at their trade.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm.
he was never shy to ask. He was not that I recall.
Right,
He
right.
was
No
one of the
doubt.
kind of guys. If he had a mission, if he was uncertain about somebody, he'd do a lot of background on the individual before he got in the ring with them.
You mentioned something about, some of the promotions that he did over there. Actually, quite a few shows. He was actually probably, I think, the primary promoter over there for a little while.
Oh,
What can you tell
100%.
me about his promotional background?
Well, two things. He when I moved to Florida from Pennsylvania in 1983, he had his own martial arts store.
Hmm,
At that time, as a matter of fact, if you recall back in the magazine, you could see him wearing the different short tops and different century kind of design uniforms, but it was called Steve Shepard's Boxing and Martial Arts Supplies.
mm,
And so, again, he was smart. He networked with everybody. When
mm,
he would promote things, he would go to all the sport clubs and restaurants, and he would set up ticket outlets at local full-time martial arts schools and small kickboxing outlets or the police athletic league.
mm.
He was constantly also giving out free tickets to these outreach programs.
Right.
He wanted people to support, in his way, local athletic businesses.
Mm,
And
mm.
business wise, yes, he was the driving force behind because he had a name. I mean, if you had a name and then he became the title of the main match or the main top four of the matches, it would draw in. I mean,
Yeah.
there's obviously he was smart. I mean, he was marketing smart, very
Right,
smart.
right. Yeah, so he was again. What you're saying is that sometimes he would headline his own shows, right? Right, and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
he let it be large or small. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't matter if it was a big venue or just a small little in-house venue. He knew how to captivate the audience, and that was important to him because he wanted people to be involved. And when they got into his classes, it wasn't just a gym where you put the gloves on and go see if you knew how to work out. Maybe somebody would show you on the side to do a couple moves.
Right.
He had an organized methodology of how he did something. And then he would take some of his up and coming guys in the lower ranks that he would classify his curriculum and even bring them into the local point tournaments. So
Mm.
he was always kind of giving them that edge of competition. And of course, they would stand out. I mean, there was the Kenny Weldon group that was down here in Palm Beach County with him and his father, and there was an old time one of our dear friends of mine who was up and coming named Michael Dorr, who passed away a number of years ago. But uh,
Mm.
you and I spoke about people like Gary Gardner, or
Right.
I mean, there's a list of names that I don't have them all. Dave
Right.
Cisco, I mean, a lot of these guys, and then the Miami people like Tony Palmore would come up, and another promoter locally was Bill Trojanowski. Steve, and Richard Fromm were the top of the three that I met in this area that
Mm-hmm.
were doing some type of promotions when kickboxing was really heavy. In other
Right,
words,
right.
everybody wanted to do it.
And they did an excellent job there as well. How so? You mentioned several times that he trained fighters and took them around to different places and things like that. What did you think about him as a trainer?
Well, the first time I met him, I thought he was quite arrogant, and
Aren't we all a little bit, right?
well, that's I was going to say that, and I
Yeah,
realized after I got to know him on a personal basis, it wasn't arrogance; it was confidence.
it's confidence.
And you had to earn a place with Steve before he take time to even conversate with you.
Right.
And he told me, he said, they come, they go, they come, they go. And he was so serious about what he believed in, he didn't want to waste his time. And there was a point in time, he actually had two locations here in Palm Beach County and got to the point where he just consolidated it back to the one because he was in too much demand. He's in
Sure.
high demand
Right.
for not only for his personal needs, but there were a lot of professionals seeking him out. And he used all the training that he obtained in both kickboxing and boxing for fitness. That was a thing for him. He felt that was a good push for 50 years and older, let alone
Mhm.
40 years and older. But he spoke of that phew, over 20 years ago. He said, you know, Billy Blanks did the Taibo. Steve Shepard was doing fitness kickboxing and boxing.
Right. Right.
And that's where he developed the businessman's workout. And what it was is during business hours, excuse me, during lunch hours, some of the business people would take their lunch break and go train with him at
Wow.
at his boxing gym.
Wow. Matt Barrow mentioned to me, a good friend of both of ours, mentioned to me that I reminded him a lot of Steve. And I never really thought about it. I never really thought about it. But just hearing you talk right now about the different programs that he did, I've done the same things. Those same type of programs. I had a businessman workout. I call it an executive workout.
There
I
you
did
go.
the kickbox aerobics. I did that program at the fitness centers all over California for a while.
Yep.
And so the same type of format, he has that. In other words, he was looking to find something beyond fighting, beyond the ring, you know.
Correct.
And you're
Correct.
so passionate about it. You want to say, I know there is a pot at the end of this rainbow somewhere. I just need to find it. And you
And,
constantly search to try to figure. And I figured some things out with my organization and stuff like that works for me and works for all of my promoters across the country. But he seems like he was on that same trajectory, if you will, and trying to find that golden pot. Your thoughts?
I think you're right. And I think those one percenters are people like you who are not only professional, but
Mm,
when you retire, you take all that menu and recipe of what worked for you, and you're like, now it's a matter of health and wellness.
right,
Because I am working out, the self defense is a given. I mean, if my skills are honed and sharp, it's just good for the brain, anyways. I
right,
mean, your left side, right side, and plus emotionally, especially during the pandemic.
right,
I mean, Bill Wallace is now doing this Wednesdays with Wallace dojo
right,
in his living room.
right.
So, which is an international opportunity. It's to keep people out of fear and use these skills to keep us healthy and well.
Absolutely.
And what you're doing for Steve Shepard and the many like Steve Shepard is bringing out the fact of who he really was. And that's the internal Steve Shepard, not the external Steve Shepard.
Right,
The spirit of
right,
Steve Shepard was a fighter by nature. He had the eye of the tiger and he believed never to quit.
right,
Never to never say never.
right.
And I he was 70 years old,
Wow.
which we should say is 70 years young because he
Mm,
was still in the gym.
right.
And I'm 59 now, and it was those kinds of people like him, like Bill, let it be like yourself and a few others who give us the inspiration to continue on and
Thank you.
enjoy our art
Mhm.
because it's in our heart.
Right, right.
That's our passion.
That's real talk. Did you
Yes,
know
sir.
him? Did he have kids?
He did. I didn't know them very well, but yes, he did. As a matter of fact, due to the issue of the accident, it was actually his daughter who had found him, which was a fall he had, which
Can you
was, I
tell us
believe,
a little
around.
bit more about that, or what happened to him at the end of his days, if it's not too personal?
I can give you the brief. The brief was he went to visit his daughter, I believe, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And during the visit, I don't know the layout of the area where they lived or where
Mhm.
what the circumstance. All I know is he had a fall. Um, I believe on some steps. Could have been the rain, could have been the sleet, could have been just whatever. And he fell. And I guess
Mm.
the fell is what it did to him and ruptured a vertebrae from what I understood. And he laid there till she found him. And I know it was a matter of months that he was hospitalized in intensive care. And then you can imagine, of course, he wasn't allowed to have really any visitors because of everything going on.
Right.
He was, excuse me, brought back to Palm Beach County about a month ago. So between that and and age maybe and everything else that was going on, I believe everything just was more on the decline. And they would be better give a more of a synopsis of the story, but that's the nut in the head, that took place as far as what I heard, what I know, and it's a freak accident because I talked to him just 2 weeks before this whole thing transpired. As far as his injury, he was excited. I had two things that were really exciting
Wow.
him. Though I told you
Mm.
already, one was
Wow.
about his life in a movie content, and the other one was about the desire to fight again. I suppose.
Doesn't that make you kind of look at life a little differently? How, in the sense that things could be just going normal, and then with the snap of a
Yes, sir.
finger, the blink of an eye, your
Yep.
whole life changes. Does that make you live your life a little differently?
A lot more differently. And as I was talking to you before we came on, I'm now working for the John Maxwell Team Company under John Maxwell, who's a very well known author. And one of the books that he has out, I find, which are many, there's two books I'm currently really deeply involved with. The first one was called Intentional Living, Living with Better Intention.
Right.
The most current one that he has is called Change Your World.
Mm.
Everybody wants to change the world. When, like John Maxwell says, well, let's start with our own individual worlds. Start with us. If we can impact and empower someone every day and bring a smile to their face and to empower them as we do as martial artists, as martial humans, coaches, speakers, mentors, big brothers, big sisters, we can change the world. And it's not out of our reach. We just have
Right.
to start locally.
Yes.
And I believe you're right. These kinds of things that happen to the people that you would never expect them to happen to make us all sit back and reevaluate and have this reflection of life and realize just how precious it is. And then realize also you don't know how bad someone else is having it at this point in time. Because
Right.
of that, it's okay to be first to smile, extend a hand, and if you're going to live with intentions, do it with the kindness of your heart without a return. You don't need a return. So the real test is on you, not on them accepting it. It's
Right.
on you giving it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's profound. That's
Yes, sir.
profound. Well, look, I mean, there's so many things that we could say, but I didn't want to keep you too long. I do know you're at work today. But the words that you've said today, I think the blessings, if you will, of sharing the spirit of a man who lived a full life, right, and who accomplished amazing things and inspired people like myself, yourself,
Yes, sir.
and so many other people. And I think you coming on today and ultimately kind of eulogizing him and saying these words has truly been a blessing, I think, to all of us. And I'm certainly thankful for it. If you want to say some final words,
Two
I'll
things
certainly
that
leave you with that.
I tell people if we could if we're on social media, hit these hashtags that say grateful, thankful, and blessed. There's three different ones. Use those in your day. But Mr. Johnny Davis, thank you for thinking of Steve in this content. I think
Absolutely.
Steve's legacy has just started, not ended.
Yes. Oh,
And
very good.
that gives us a very kind blessing to a man who did touch many lives, far greater than we realize. And it's episodes like this that allow his family to realize he was a hero in many hearts.
Absolutely. 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 Mr. Sean Kelly, thanks so much, sir, for joining us today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking there with Mr. Sean Kelly. Just really inspiring and words about Mr. Steve Shepard there, who we lost just the other day. Again, he was a tremendous champion, five-time world kickboxing champion, and again, just inspired a lot, and certainly, paved the way for people like myself. And so I'm very thankful for his contributions to the sport and just to the world of martial arts. Also, as you see on the bottom of the screen there, we lost another crew in the North Carolina area, well known Mr. Rick Davis, Crew Rick Davis, who is the trainer of Mr. J.T. Smith of Lake Norman and Lake Hickory and probably Lake Statesville, Muay Thai. And he was well known in the area, trained a lot of people, highly, sought out by a lot of people and highly respected. So our sincere condolences to the Lake Norman family and to Crew Rick. Okay, that's all I have for you today. I want to thank everybody once again for watching another edition of Johnny Davis Live. We will be back on tomorrow speaking with our lead doctor, our lead fight doctor, regarding the COVID-19 virus and how we're kind of winding down in that area and what we need to do right now to move forward. Again, guys, wear those masks for right now. Get that vaccination. That's my suggestion. Always forward march. This is John Davis Live, and I'm checking out. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.